Good evening and welcome. My name is Chase Rend. I'm the Executive Director here at the National Building Museum, and we're delighted that you could join us for the presentation of the 2010 Henry C. Turner Prize for Innovation in Construction Technology. Named after the founder of Turner Construction Company, this prestigious award recognizes an invention, an innovative methodology, and/or exceptional leadership by an individual or team of individuals in construction technology and carries a cash award of $25,000. Since its inception in 2002, the Turner Prize has been awarded to structural engineer Leslie E. Robertson, architect I.M. Pei, engineer and builder Charles A. DeBenedictis, the U.S. Green Building Council, Stanford professor Paul Teicholz, Gary Partners and Gary Technologies, and last year, Charles Thornton, ACE Mentor Program founder. Tonight, we are proud to honor Engineers Without Borders USA as this year's recipient of the Turner Prize. Dubbed the, quote, Blueprint Brigade by Time magazine, Engineers Without Borders USA pairs engineering students with professionals to help build critical infrastructure in over 45 developing countries, providing clean water, sustainable energy systems, and even housing. Their approach educates engineers about global responsibility while teaching developing communities how to effectively use engineering, thus creating a mutually beneficial relationship. Because of their work, students and professionals are currently expanding a health clinic in El Salvador, building a rain catchment system in Brazil, and constructing a water supply and sanitation project in Cameroon. Their inspirational work has touched the lives of more than 1 million people, with over 250 chapters located in the United States. The National Building Museum Board of Trustees and staff salute their efforts to improve the built environment around them while educating the next generation of engineers. This year alone, as you all know, we have seen the devastating impact of natural disasters such as earthquakes in Haiti and Chile, floods in Pakistan, and tropical storms in Mexico, underscoring the important work of Engineers Without Borders to provide critical infrastructure around the globe. Past Turner Prize recipient Charles DeBenedictis shared these comments about Engineers Without Borders in a letter that he recently sent to us. And I quote, "Their widespread efforts will hopefully continue wherever their service can fulfill a need. The needs, I am sure, will be ongoing, and so too will their service. This is an award that honors future accomplishments of Engineers Without Borders in addition to those for which they are currently being recognized. As such, it is an outstanding choice for the Turner Prize. Please extend my congratulations." And now, to introduce Engineers Without Borders, we have a short film clip for you to see about their work.
All right, let's test it. Here we go.
Well, we're digging a trench. As you can see, we're plumbing up this well here to this tank.
That works.
There's enough to do to keep everybody busy.
So this is the temperature reading right here.
We're trying to find the center so we can mount it on the post.
There we go.
It's raining and it's wet, but it's good. We're helping people. A bridge. It's pretty cool.
Engineering is a team sport.
It takes a community. It really means a lot here.
The community is going to be, wow, we never thought we could build a bridge, but they did, right? They did it. So now they're going to know that they can do a lot of other things, whatever else is important to the community.
I got involved with environmental engineering so I could make a difference in the lives of people.
It's such a diverse field that you can have all kinds of different interests and it'll fit somewhere.
Engineering takes into effect almost every science. On our project here, we've got chemists, toxicologists, mechanical engineers. You know, every discipline works together to sort of come up with solutions.
That's one of the best parts about engineering is the teamwork, because you're always working together on some of the biggest problems.
There's a role for anyone. If you're willing to go and give your time to another community and help out, then Engineers Without Borders is glad to have you.
It never ceases to amaze me how much work you can actually accomplish when you get a whole bunch of people working together for a common cause.
It's real. The kind of things that I do, you can actually see and people can use.
We're in Nyamuninge. We are doing water sampling to try to understand water quality for the Nyamwanga village.
We get chlorella from water.
Our EWB chapter is coming up with a system to convert waste vegetable oil into biodiesel that they can use.
We're going to have a better fuel in terms of the environment and probably save us some money in our fuel costs.
What we're trying to do here is to mitigate the gray water that's coming down the street here and have this go into a soak pit rather than run down the street.
Public health is incredibly important. Clean water, that's really the foundation of keeping people from getting sick.
This is the river here. It's small right now, but during the wet season, it gets to be like 180 feet wide, so they need a bridge over it to get to the train station and the school.
They're not just in a jungle somewhere. They are very smart people in an area where they just don't have, frankly, the money to put something together.
To be truthful, I think I learn a lot from the people that I work from here as much as I help them out.
We would like to have their involvement. We'd like to set an example. We'd like to see them carry on.
Present a solution that the village can continue to use in the long run.
We have to think not only of our children and our grandchildren, we need to think far into the future.
Things aren't going to change at all for the better unless the community can help build themselves up.
We want them to say it's our bridge and we did it, not it's your bridge and you did it.
What we learn from the engineers, we can do it, we can help the community.
But I will organize the people to help me so that we will plan.
It's more than just the project. It's an empowerment of people working together.
The world is bigger. You can go out there and then make a difference.
What's important to us is relationships. And as we travel this river together side by side, each in our own vessel, we're to help each other from time to time because that's what people are meant to do.
Thank you for helping.
Bye.
It's a great film. Before we get on with our program, I do want to thank the Turner Prize jury for making this selection. The Turner jury is Tom Turner, past Vice President of Turner Construction Company, Art Gensler, founder and chairman of the architectural firm Gensler, Clyde Tatum, professor and chair, Civil and Environmental Engineering, Stanford University, Hal Parmalee, past president of Turner Construction Company. And I would like to especially recognize a brand new member of the Turner Prize jury, Jan Tuckman, editor-in-chief of Engineering News Record, who will be moderating a discussion at the end of this program this evening. Welcome, Jan. We owe very special thanks to Turner Construction Company for establishing an endowment that supports the annual Henry C. Turner Prize and for their continued support of the National Building Museum. And then on that note, now please allow me to introduce you to Peter Daverin, CEO and President of Turner Construction Company.
Thank you very much, Chase. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It really is truly an honor to be with you this evening as we recognize Engineers Without Borders USA as the recipient of the 2010 Henry C. Turner Prize for Innovation. As the 8th recipient of the Turner Prize, which was established on the occasion of Turner's centennial in 2002, Engineers Without Borders joins a prestigious list of recipients. The prize recognizes invention, innovation, or exceptional leadership in the construction industry. This year's awardee is truly deserving of recognition in each of these categories. Engineers Without Borders' mission of engaging the next generation of engineers who work with professionals in the industry to develop community-driven development programs is making a huge difference in the lives of millions of people around the globe. Engineers Without Borders is providing a platform for the next generation of engineers to design and build innovative, sustainable engineering projects while developing leadership skills and fostering in these individuals a commitment to making a difference in the community. For these reasons, it is my honor to be here tonight and to recognize the achievements of Engineers Without Borders with the award of the 2010 Turner Prize. Thank you very much. And now, I would like to invite Kathy Leslie, Executive Director, and David Stewart, Board President of Engineers Without Borders USA, to join Chase and myself to accept the 2010 Henry C. Turner Prize.
So I think for the photo op, we need to move this down here. Isn't that right? And do we pick this up?
I would like to thank for this prestigious award and the National Building Museum for hosting this event. On behalf of EWB-USA and its volunteers, I am honored to accept this award. This recognition from our industry reminds us all that the work that EWB-USA does is necessary and makes a difference, not only to the communities which we serve, but also to our profession. The EWB-USA journey began in 2000 with a chance conversation between our founder, Dr. Bernard Amadei, and his landscaper, a gentleman from Belize whose village had no water infrastructure. From that chance conversation began the first EWB-USA project, the installation of a ram pump to pump water from the river to the community, rather than the children carrying it back and forth. From there, the excitement within universities and the professional community began. As a practicing professional engineer in Colorado, I joined this excitement in 2002 and became part of the second EWB-USA project in Futaka, Zambagu, Mali, West Africa. EWB-USA in the early years was about excitement, passion, and the desire to give back. But to give back how was the question. We've all heard the statistics about the world in which we live. Millions of people lack adequate water, sanitation, food, and access to markets, education, and health care. Children live in poverty and may never make it to their 5th birthday. The statistics are well known and daunting. How does one person or one organization affect change at the scale that is needed today? And you also have to ask, but what about tomorrow? In the next 2 decades, the problems of the globe will increase tremendously in all areas of infrastructure. In telecom alone, 1 billion phones are expected to be distributed in the next few years, of which 80% of them will be distributed in developing countries. Today, in the Western world, we have freeways, water systems, housing, but we've also stressed our resources and have congestion, smog, and brownouts. In the developing world, we have dirty water and children who make a living by picking refuse from landfills to survive. We have a lack of infrastructure in the developing world that would never be contemplated here at home. Today, the developing world is 90% of the world's population, and this is only going to get worse. Yet within this section of the population, there are far fewer professionals who are trained to work in developing communities and to create capacity in those same communities. These realizations led to the development of the EWB-USA mission and vision, and what we believe our role is in the world. As professionals, we believe that we have an obligation to work with the 90% of the rest of the world that struggles to survive, to drink clean water, to turn on a light bulb, and to raise their children in security and safety. Our mission and vision provide a roadmap for our organizations, and by working towards them, we have developed key principles that guide our programs. We collaborate with our communities and partners to ensure the long-term viability of our programs. We are innovative with our approach by blending the training of engineering students with the experienced professionals for the good of our communities. We design and implement sustainable engineering projects that can be maintained by systems that are community-focused. And we transform those with whom we work and create a new breed of professional who understands that the key to success and survival requires a global workforce that is that believes in these principles. The EWB-USA program focuses around a 5-year commitment to a community. And within these 5-year commitments, we construct distinct engineering projects. It is fairly common to find the construction of 3 to 5 engineering projects within that community program, many of which address water and sanitation. Now think back to those numbers that I showed you a few slides ago, and know that within the first 8 years of its life, Engineers Without Borders USA has touched and improved the lives of over 1 million individuals through the efforts of 12,000 individual volunteers. The 5-year commitment may seem daunting to a student engineering his sophomore year, but it really is this commitment to a community's long-term viability that is creating that new breed of engineering professional. This new engineering professional isn't content to merely install one well and walk away, not knowing if it will work next year. But they want to know and ensure that their projects can be maintained by the community and work not just in 1 year, but in 10 and in 20. This is the new face of engineering, and you will hear from 3 of these engineers tonight. These engineers are the new global workforce who are more resourceful, more creative, and more demanding of themselves and their profession. They are collaborative, innovative, and prepared to transform not only themselves, but their communities through the implementation of engineering projects. Next, you will hear from 3 EWB-USA chapter representatives. These members will discuss the 4th and final item of today's presentation, transformation, and how EWB-USA has helped them to do that. So please allow me to introduce our next speaker, Drew Quirk from the Minnesota Professional Chapter.
Thanks, Kathy. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the honor of presenting to you tonight. I'm going to give you a brief look at my background and how I became involved in EWB-USA, and then share some of my experiences in the organization. I was raised in Madison, Wisconsin, and graduated from the university there in 2008. Up here. With a degree. Can I just use? That's okay? Okay. With a degree in mechanical engineering and a passion for energy. I spent a summer designing and installing solar photovoltaic systems before accepting a full-time position in Minneapolis, Minnesota as an energy efficiency engineer with Excel Energy. Aha. In this role, I analyze energy efficiency opportunities in the residential, commercial, industrial systems, modeling theoretical energy savings of a highly efficient technology relative to a baseline or lesser efficient one. In the space of a few months, I became fully engrossed in this world and was fascinated by it. I still am. But I started to think a little bit more about what we were actually capturing in our analyses. The so-called baseline scenarios that my colleagues and I scoff at, though non-optimal by our standards, are still sophisticated electromechanical systems available only to a fraction of the world. But what about those millions of people across the globe whose baseline doesn't even include enough food and clean water to sustain life? About this time, I saw that EWB-USA had a professional chapter in the Twin Cities. When I arrived at my first meeting, I found a group of engaged volunteers from a wide variety of backgrounds, and after learning more about the organization, I knew I found what I was looking for. Within a month, I accepted the position of project manager for a water supply and distribution project in Honduras, and have been thoroughly rewarded for the decision ever since. The project is an interesting one in the sense that it isn't what would first come to mind when you think of a typical EWB-USA project. We're not, as in the first project conducted by Professor Amade and his students, bringing water to a community that previously had to work several hours each day to get it. The communities we are working with, made up of approximately 3,200 people spread across 500 households in 9 villages, have had a water system, complete with storage tanks, regulating valves, and household tap stands for over 20 years. The problem they've run into, and the problem our chapter is striving to resolve, runs a little bit deeper than the pipes in the ground. Over time, the system that was once able to supply sufficient water to each and every household is now underserving the majority of the population. In the graphic shown here, brown bars indicate community populations, and blue bars indicate the quantity of water currently reaching those communities. The red bars, plotted on the same scale as the blue, indicate how much water, per minimum international standards, should be reaching each community. The causes of this disparity involve not only inadequacies in the design of pipes, valves, and tanks to properly distribute water, but also in the management of that infrastructure by community leadership. Combined, these deficiencies result in a system that degraded to a point where leaks, high political tension, and corruption were all commonplace. But now, thanks to several driving forces within the communities and a little help from us, they are committed to resolving these problems and are well on their way. At the moment, our group is generating design options, and the communities are making impressive strides in developing their management scheme. So what are these driving forces within the communities? First off, there are some extremely motivated and skilled workers. I once watched a man named Eligio fashion a 3-foot square sand sieve out of 2x4s and chicken mesh with nothing more than a machete at his side and the space of 15 minutes. Measure twice, cut once, more like eyeball once, finished product. Second, there are clever technical minds. Without formal training, Ernesto Palma, the system technician pictured in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, has the ability to predict non-trivial hydraulic effects of small system changes to every corner of the distribution network. Without our suggestion, he has made several brilliant modifications to improve system performance. And third, there is passionate leadership. Doña Argentina Salguero, pictured in the middle of this slide, who I'm guessing would rival anyone sitting here in this room in terms of cell phone call volume, has a vision of her community and has the charisma and intellect to inspire those around her to achieve it. Though knocked down in higher political circles due to her gender, she is the motivating force behind our involvement in the project and maintains the respect of community leadership, male and female. As you can see, the biggest impact these projects have on me really isn't derived from the design process, but more so from the relationships we build with the people we serve, our customers. And that is something I've been able to bring back to the office here in the States. Instead of focusing solely on the technology, which is the unfortunate emphasis of engineering curricula across the country, we are forced to assess our customers' needs, which in most cases are much greater than any customer we may face here, and really tailor our solutions to the people. And I'll tell you, office colleagues of mine in the marketing and sales department start to get a little uneasy when they see the engineer thinking in these terms. Our chapter is also in the unique position that we are tightly woven into the fabric of a thriving student chapter environment. The University of Minnesota Twin Cities chapter has previously been selected as a premier chapter and boasts a membership of hundreds of future engineers. Along with projects in Haiti and Ghana, they are collaborating with our professional group in 2 water supply projects, one in Guatemala, pictured here, and the other with me in Honduras. The fact that we are able to share ideas and experiences with this dynamic group allows us not only to impart our worldly knowledge, not only in terms of design, but in terms of career decisions as well, but to generate solutions that neither group could come up with individually, either due to underexperience for the students or what I call over-experience for the professionals. Although there are challenges in this collaboration, to be sure, our groups have done an outstanding job of developing a mutually beneficial partnership and ultimately brings better solutions to the communities we serve. I'd like to wrap up my presentation today by thanking you all again for your support of this amazing organization that is transforming not only the communities and villages we are working in across the world, but also the students and professionals involved in these projects to be better, more compassionate leaders and for our collective future. Thank you. And next I would like to invite Lauren Case from University of Arizona Tucson chapter up.
Thanks, Drew. Again, my name is Lauren Case, and I am a senior in civil engineering at the University of Arizona and the current president of our chapter of Engineers Without Borders. I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about how I got involved with EWB-USA and what it has meant for my life, both academically and personally. My first inspiration to pursue engineering came from my father, a mechanical engineer. His practical and resourceful problem-solving skills and willingness to lend a helping hand has shown me how useful engineering is to the individual. This is how I first formed my definition of what makes an engineer. Someone who practically solves problems for the betterment of individuals, communities, and societies throughout the world. And I was able to see this in action early on in my life. When I was 11, I had my first opportunity to do development work. I traveled with my family and a group from my church to Juarez, Mexico, to help build a home for a family. And while I was there, I fell in love with the process, the whole building process, from laying the foundation, putting up the walls, hanging drywall, putting up stucco. I loved getting my hands dirty. But I also fell in love with the people, learning a new language and playing with the neighborhood kids. From 11 up to the time I went to college, I was able to go on 2 more trips to Juarez, Mexico, and 1 trip to Pascagoula, Mississippi, to help in Hurricane Katrina relief. At that point, I was hooked on this kind of work, and I knew I had to be doing this for the rest of my life. In all my college essays, I wrote about how I dreamt of bringing electricity, running water, and housing to people in developing countries. But I wasn't so sure how I was going to do this. I can't remember the exact day I heard about Engineers Without Borders USA, but I do remember searching on one university's website for engineering clubs to get involved with, and came across their chapter of EWB-USA. From their website, I ventured onto the EWB-USA website, and after looking at their vision and mission, and the projects that students just a few years older than me had been getting involved in, I knew I had to be part of this organization. The minute I arrived on campus at the U of A, I knew I had to find their chapter of EWB-USA and start getting involved. It was a huge deciding factor on attending the University of Arizona. I am now in my 4th year of being involved in the University of Arizona chapter of EWB-USA, and it has made all the difference in my college career. Something I always think about with EWB-USA is that it's not just another resume booster. So many of our engineering clubs are just about making you look good on paper for your future career. But EWB, for me, has been more about teaching students how to use their talents and giftings to build up others. At the end of last year, I attended a College of Engineering recruitment event, and the dean polled the high school seniors in attendance why they wanted to be engineers. The choices including a love for math and science, a desire to design and build things, and lastly, to help people. But not a single student chose the latter. But I know that EWB can and is changing this perspective among students. Aside from academics, EWB has made my dreams a reality. I have learned much since I was an 11-year-old putting stucco up on a house in Mexico. This work can be hard. It's not easy crossing cultural boundaries, bridging language barriers, and communicating from across the ocean. Through the international conferences, I have heard the stories of professionals who have risked a lot to do this type of work. And with our chapter's project in Ghana, I have witnessed the hard work of other members in our chapter, alongside a dedicated community, come together to build a roughing filter that now services over 10,000 people with clean water. And for the past year, I've been helping on our project in Mali, Africa, that is also focused on water issues. This past summer, I traveled on an assessment trip to Mali, Africa. We were at a local's home in Bamako, and the kids from the neighborhood had gathered around. We played games, danced, and sang for what seemed like hours. The kids had so much energy. When we finally had the chance to sit down, the kids stared at me, as usual, and asked, "Why are you smiling?" I replied, "You make me happy." Then one by one, they proceeded to thank me in turn, shaking my hand. And this is why I love EWB-USA. It simply brings joy to my life, and it is a chain reaction. We are passing on compassion for one another. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Sarah Beck from the Central Houston Professional Chapter up to the stand.
Thank you very much, Lauren. So far tonight, you've heard from one professional and one student. Now I'd like to share my story as a professional who turned back into a student after my experience with Engineers Without Borders USA. My EWB-USA story begins in the summer of 2003, which I spent volunteering in a village in eastern Uganda. I was there with a different organization, and we had two primary objectives. The first one was to construct the vocational center that you see in the top row of photos. And the second was to travel with a doctor who created a mobile clinic to travel from village to village in the surrounding region. My experience there was truly eye-opening. I had just graduated in aerospace engineering, and I remember thinking at the time, why didn't I major in something useful like medicine so that I could go here and help this doctor and help these people? But by the end of the summer, I had convinced myself that engineering was just as useful as the medical profession, and it was just as important as well. After I returned back to the US, I started my first job as an aerospace engineer. I was working as a flight controller at Johnson Space Center. It was a very cool job, and I had the opportunity to write procedures that astronauts would follow to help assemble the International Space Station. My first major assignment was to write a procedure to use the space shuttle's robotic arm to unberth a truss segment from the shuttle's payload bay and hand it off to the space station's robotic arm, which would then install it on the space station. This was a very cool job to be involved in. I was truly at the heart of the manned space program, but something about it wasn't right. Even though I felt challenged by this job, I felt inspired and I was very proud of my work. There was something about it that just left me a little bit unfulfilled, and I continued to search for a greater sense of purpose. So I decided to get involved in Engineers Without Borders USA. At the time, Houston didn't have a professional chapter, so I started one, and I worked with another engineer to co-found the Central Houston Professional Partners chapter of EWB-USA. At the time, I was 23, and I had only been working for about a year, and I didn't have a whole lot of professional experience, but I knew that there were engineers throughout the Houston area who did, and it became my goal to find those engineers and to get them involved and to get them to help and work with us on some of these projects around the world. Since then, in the last 5.5 years, our chapter has worked on projects in 6 different countries. These include a large water tank and distribution system in Bolivia, wells and washing stations in India, Andhra Pradesh, a water distribution system at a hospital in Kenya, and solar power in Nicaragua. My first Engineers Without Borders USA project was constructing a retaining wall in a community called Colonia Esmeralda, which is just on the outskirts of San Salvador. And here they requested our help with this project to control the erosion of the only road into the community that you see on the left. Whenever it rained in the rainy season, this road would become extremely muddy, and 2 cars had actually slid off the edge there. And so they wanted help in controlling that erosion. And we were able to do it by constructing the retaining wall that you see on the right with their help. That wall measures about 5 meters at its highest point. After a couple of years, the same Ugandan doctor that I'd worked with in 2003, he requested our help with the same vocational center that I helped construct, which you see in the picture in the top right. His request was specifically for water and power to that vocational center. But since then, we've not only worked on the water and power systems, we've also worked on water systems in the surrounding community, including the protected spring that you see on the left picture. This spring, we worked on this earlier this summer, and I've never seen people work so hard before. At the time, I was standing there at the excavation site, and I heard somebody shouting off into Lugisu, and someone translated for me. They said, he's saying, everybody come and come carry materials for your spring. The next thing I knew, people were appearing between the crops, and then there was this line of people that you see on the bottom right, and they were carrying the materials for their spring because they knew the importance of it. Here, these gentlemen are carrying 50-kilogram bags of cement on their heads. We also saw women with concrete blocks carried on their heads, and they walked about a mile up to the site of their spring. Also in this community, this past summer, we worked on the construction of a rainwater harvesting system. And here we got a grant from the Caterpillar Foundation to purchase the interlocking brick press that you see in the picture in the bottom left. This machine was designed by a Ugandan for use with Ugandan soil. So we went to an excavation site about 3 kilometers away and ordered 3 truckloads of soil, and then went to the site. And basically they're able to press the local soil, mix it with cement and water, and to form these bricks. And they don't have to be dried in a kiln. They don't need time to dry. We're able to use them the exact same day, and we were able to start constructing the tank that you see in the bottom there. It's a 13,000-liter water storage tank. Now that same machine, the interlocking brick press, is being used as a teaching tool at the same vocational center that I've been involved with for the last 5 years. Now the students there are using that as a tool to pass on the knowledge to the bricklaying students and further the profession. Engineers Without Borders has been a very large part of my life for the last 6 years. It's been so important that I decided to change careers. And last November, I left my job as an aerospace engineer in order to go back to school and study environmental engineering. I'm now working on a PhD and researching water reuse systems for the developing world at the University of Colorado through their Mortensen Center for Engineering and Developing Communities. I often hear the quote that you must be the change that you wish to see. I know in 2003 there was a lot of change that I wished to see in the community in Uganda. Through Engineers Without Borders USA, I have been able to be a small part of that change. Thank you again for your time and for your support of this wonderful organization. I'm now going to hand the mic back over to Kathy.
Thank you, Lauren, Drew, and Sarah. You do justice not only to the EWB-USA program, but also to your profession. So in closing, I'd like to introduce to you the EWB-USA Board of Directors President and CEO of Stewart Environmental Engineering, Dr. Dave Stewart.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for all that are here tonight. As you can see, what we're doing is changing the face of engineers in the world and certainly within our profession. And EWB is really putting a human face back into people who become engineers. We become technologists through our education because we're good at math and science. But as you can see from these students and from a story I'm going to tell you in a second, we're really changing the way engineers look and feel and think. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my own story. I'm a Rotarian as well as an engineer, and Rotary International is one of our partners with EWB, and we do a lot of work with Rotary International. And I work with a small college in Montana called Carroll College. There's about 100 engineering students, so it's a small college. And I got involved with an orphanage down in Mexico through the Salazar family, Ken Salazar and his brother John and his other brother Leroy. We went down and visited, and you could see the issues that you had with the orphanage. 300 orphans, so it's the third largest orphanage in Mexico. And one of the things that you find there was that they were sick a lot of the time. And it was because they had an open sewer and an open wastewater pond. So therein lies the opportunity. The opportunity was to put in a good wastewater treatment plant and actually do a water reuse system. And so we were able to grow algae in the wastewater. We then used that algae to feed tilapia. Tilapia have a unique characteristic. It's a very good white fish, but it has a unique characteristic in that it doesn't bioaccumulate. So that tilapia then was used as a new food source for the orphanage. That then also cleaned up the wastewater enough that we could apply it to the land to grow alfalfa for rabbits. And so here's a project that was conceived between professionals and engineering students to really take it to another level. As we're training these orphans to run the system, an amazing thing happened. We're sitting there, and there were 3 students and one older gentleman, and one of the students was kind of daydreaming. And so Father Mike went up to him afterwards and said, "Jose, why weren't you paying attention?" He said, "Oh, Father, I was paying attention. What I've decided, though, is," he said, "I was daydreaming about becoming an engineer." And he said, "What I want to be able to do is change people's lives 5,000 at a time." And so that led to our next project there. As Kathy intimated, these chapters adopt a village. And so our next project is what we call Spices to College. And what we're going to do is put in about 10 hectares of irrigated land to grow basil and oregano. And the biggest thing of any spice operation is the labor. So the orphans are going to contribute the labor to this project, but what we get out of that is that we net about $20,000 a year. That can send 20 orphans to college every year. So here's an EWB project that's helping an orphanage change the lives of those orphans from somebody who's in poverty going up to being where they will be a professional in their community. So what I would like to do is I would also like to thank the Turner Construction and National Building Museum for our award today. In addition, I'd like to thank our many sponsors who have encouraged EWB-USA to continue to grow in our program and in our size. That support comes from ASCE, ASME, Boeing, AECOM, CDM, CH2M Hill, Google, Louis Berger, Black & Veatch, along with many other firms that we have in our organization. And I want to thank you for your time tonight, and we're going to open up a panel session. So please help me welcome to, as our moderator, Jan Tuckman, Editor-in-Chief of Engineering News Record and a member of the jury.
Welcome. It's nice to see so many faces in the audience and this amazing panel. As everyone said, I'm Jan Tuckman. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Engineering News Record, and my connection with EWB is that ENR selected their founder, Bernard Amadei, as our Award of Excellence winner. And he came and spoke, and I was so moved by the story that has been alluded to this evening about the little girls who couldn't go to school because they had to haul water, and what EWB was able to do in putting in a pipeline and putting in solar power to run the pumps to make the water go, and it was amazing. I wondered if those of you in the audience are there engineers out there? Raise your hand if you're an engineer. There's some engineers out there. How about someone who has a family member who's an engineer, or someone who has a family member who's an engineering student or an EWB chapter member? Anybody out there? And how about the Turner crowd? I know there's some people from Turner out there. Yay. Good, good. So we've got a little idea now who's out there talking to us. I think the first thing it would be nice to talk about a little more is the process of, you all alluded to it, the partnering communities, that people make a 5-year commitment, which does sound huge. How do the chapters decide what community they're going to work with around the world, and what does that mean about the 5-year commitment? Who wants to take that?
I guess I'll start. The project that I wanted to mention was a project we worked on in Cochabamba, Bolivia. And what was unique about this one is that It was started, as far as my chapter's perspective goes, it was started by a member of ours who was from Bolivia, and he left his home country to come and study in the US and got a degree in Houston and decided he wanted to go back and help people in Cochabamba. And he went and he got in touch with the Rotary Club there and spoke with them and started asking questions about what's the need here. And pretty soon he was put in touch with 6 communities on the outskirts of Cochabamba who wanted help with a water system, and they had been trying through many different avenues to get this system constructed. And he worked with them to have them complete an application. It's an application for a new project with Engineers Without Borders USA. And since then, we've been working in that community for, I'd say, 3 or 4 years now. What happens is they complete the project application. It gets approved by a committee at the Engineers Without Borders level, and if it's not already attributed to a certain chapter, then chapters will fill out an application to acquire the project. But in this case, it was already tied to the Central Houston chapter. And from that moment, the chapter teams work, and they work for a couple months and start planning an assessment trip. Then they travel out to the community, in this case in Bolivia, and spoke with the community members, did a needs assessment, did water tests, and found out exactly what the need was and what the community was going to contribute to that need. And they also wrote a memorandum of understanding to identify who would be in charge of what. And then the team came back and worked on the design while maintaining communication with that community. And then they went back for the implementation trip. And we've since been involved in, I think, 3 different implementation trips in the same community. So,
Kathy, is that kind of a typical process, that there's a personal connection, perhaps, with the community? David is actually shaking his head. You hear? Is that?
It is. We receive projects 2 different ways. One through the chapter connection that Sarah was talking about. The other one is through people who know of us, and they'll approach us through Peace Corps volunteers, Rotarians, or people we work with, in which case we'll review their project and we'll try and find a chapter to work on their project.
So how's the balance right now? More projects than you have engineers to do them, or?
Absolutely. There's more interest than we can fulfill.
Wow. Wow.
And I think another piece of this that we haven't talked about too much, but it's life-changing for both the professionals and the students. These projects are, when you actually go down and work with the children and work with the individuals, and a lot of these communities already have a good idea about what they're going to do. We're really there to help them implement it and help them put it together. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our younger engineers to not only give back to the community, but it does change the way they look at life, very much so.
And I think that's true of the professionals as well. You know, you don't get a cement truck backing up to your job site. Home Depot tends to be a donkey with 2 pieces of pipe laying around that comes across the front of the store. So it's very different, and it teaches very different skills from a traditional engineering education.
Now, how about the 5-year commitment thing? Do people actually go for 5 years and stay in the community in Mali or someplace like that?
We do ask chapters to make a 5-year commitment, and within the university setting, that's a little difficult because hopefully the students will graduate after 4 or 5 years. But nonetheless, the chapters are getting very good at creating leadership structures. The seniors mentor the sophomores as project leads and the chapter officers. So the chapters truly do make that commitment, and they truly do travel back and forth to these communities for 5 years and 5 years plus.
So, but it's more of a back and forth thing rather than going and living there for
Absolutely.
5 years. I see. Okay.
Yeah, another thing about that 5-year commitment, I think, which is very, very important, and by no means the sole reason why Engineers Without Borders is successful in these communities, but specific to the project working in Honduras, these communities have been trying for over 10 years to get their system improved, to get a partnering organization to come in and help reconstruct this system. And so they obviously met us with some degree of skepticism in that, okay, we've had 5, 10 organizations come down here, take a look at our stuff, and then they left, and they didn't come back. Mm-hmm. We never heard from them again. And so now, 2 years, 3 years into the project, we're gaining a lot of their confidence, and they can see, and obviously with, I think, something like 40 or 50 projects in Honduras, they have connections that'll tell them that this organization is for real, and they have a commitment, and they will be back. So I think that's really a testament to the organization as well.
How about the financing for the projects? I mean, I know right now you've got a wonderful prize, and I'm sure that's gonna help. But how is the typical method of getting money to, besides providing the engineering skills? Projects are going to take a certain amount of money, donations or something.
Well, I'll let the students and professionals chime in, but I have to say we fundraise anywhere and everywhere, whether that's family gatherings, professional offices, bake sales. I can let you tell their individual stories, but we do do a lot of fundraising both at the national level and the local levels to get these projects off the ground.
And Lauren, how about your project? How'd you get the money?
For our first project in Ghana, it was heavily funded by Rotary International, and we were actually able to get some money from airlines donating tickets to go there, which helped a lot in the travel process, because that can be up to 50% of the travel or the cost of the overall trip. And that project ended up being, the total project budget was $92,000, which is huge for student chapters to come up with. Currently, with our project in Mali, it's been difficult getting funding. We got it within the last 2 years, and it's been hard getting businesses to fund us, sponsor our fundraising efforts. But we do get a lot of our funding from the university through other clubs, Engineering Student Council. We get $25 for coming to a meeting, and that's we like that $25. And then also, from the College of Engineering, we get some funding. We can apply for grants through EWB-USA. That's also very helpful. And yeah, so we really do try to get our sources from anything and everywhere.
Is there a big national fundraising campaign at national level?
We do have a national fundraising campaign, and we fundraise not only to support the projects, but to support the infrastructure, to make sure the projects are of good quality and ready to go. That's been a little bit more difficult in the past couple of years. We're hoping that ends, but we do send, I would say, 80% of the money that we receive down to the chapters that goes towards the programs.
And I think another issue or another opportunity that we have is that we are starting to network a lot better. So Rotary International is a big player in what we try to do. What we're seeing is that other foundations are coming together to really expand that money. So while the Rotary will not pay for travel, they pay for bricks and mortar. And so a lot of the fundraising we also have to do is to get the students to the location.
Yeah, I was thinking that probably helpful to you would be these in-kind kinds of contributions, and we've got to get the message out to the construction industry, because they are in a position, and to material suppliers and people like that who could help out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had at the orphanage, we did get a very nice contribution of plastic sewer pipe from John Mansfield. However, it was from the U.S. plant. So when it got down to Mexico, of course, everything's in metric. So we had the American pipe and metric fittings. Didn't work really well. Students figured out that duct tape works very well.
And can be found everywhere.
Yeah.
Innovation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I was writing that down. I wrote that down during the talk because it's a prize for innovation. And I thought of asking you all about the process of innovating. Like, you're out there in the field, there must be a lot of examples that you can think of where you had to figure something out. You had a problem, and they had no idea it was going to be there, not an obstacle, but you came up with a way.
I don't want to, I guess, I wanted to bring up one quick point about the overall fundraising pie. One important piece of that. Yes, we do a majority of the fundraising, but a big part of the community's contribution needs to come from that as well. So I know that specific to our project in Honduras, we're writing into our memorandum of understanding that the communities will contribute anywhere from 2 to 11% of the total capital cost to implement the project. I mean, they're going to, through their the unskilled labor process, contribute, you know, a significant amount of work. But it's the mindset of, I know a good majority of development agencies that there needs to be a financial contribution there as well. And so obviously they're earning less than $1 a day. It's not going to be a lot, but it should be something.
Yeah, it's probably healthy for the community to feel like they've got a stake in it. It's not just being given to them, but
it's their project.
It's an investment. It's really theirs, right? Well, did anyone have an idea about the innovation, though? Sarah?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind when you bring that up is that we had a tape measure confiscated on the flight over once, and so I ended up measuring everything in flip-flops. I would just walk off the distance of the building, and that seemed fine.
It was a dangerous tape measure. It could have been a danger to the flight, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of our projects have to definitely have a plan A all the way down to plan, Z, because you never know when you're going to run into something. When you're digging trench by hand and you run into a huge rock, well, guess what? You're not going to get the backhoe out and pull out the rock. You're going to go around it, and you're typically not going to have the pipe fittings to do that, or you're going to run into something. So we're constantly having to think on our feet to make judgment calls about what we can do better or things that we can do in spite of other things. And there's funny stories out there. I was doing an assessment on small feeder dams in Rwanda, and I couldn't figure out, there was evidence they had them and they pulled them down, and I couldn't figure out why they didn't want to put a dam back, because it's a great way to hold back water. And they looked at me and they said, well, but the hippopotamuses move in. And in engineering school, you don't plan for hippopotamuses. You don't plan for the waters ripping up the water, or the elephants ripping up the water lines because they can smell the water. I mean, you just don't plan for those, and so you're constantly thinking on your feet.
Right.
And that leads to the sustainability piece as well. We use local materials, so a lot of our projects, you have to understand when you go down there that there isn't a Home Depot next door, and that you have to start using materials that are on site.
And that kind of goes into our project for U of A at Mali, or in Mali. We, for innovation in the actual design process too, where our original project scope was rainwater harvesting. So for building cisterns, we were like, well, cement is also very costly. It's also people who have cement buildings in the village are definitely more wealthy, and so we wanted it to be accessible to people who are not necessarily the wealthiest in the village. And so we actually found an article about cisterns in Mali that were built out of converted adobe granaries that they had already been building for years. And so they just were lined with a really small amount of cement, ferro cement, about a centimeter thick. And so that's what we've been looking at for the design of our cisterns in the village, because it is very far from any materials. It's about 16 hours away from any kind of cement and other types of materials. So, yeah.
Interesting. I should have mentioned earlier that I did want to give the audience a chance to ask questions of these interesting panelists, and I don't know if anybody has one. Yeah, well, here's a question right here. We have a mic coming around, so we can hear you.
Does EWB ever work with the Peace Corps volunteers?
Yes. We work with Peace Corps frequently. I'm a past Peace Corps volunteer myself, and we have a lot of students going into the Peace Corps, and then when they're coming out, they're going into EWB. But we do have frequent partnerships with the Peace Corps.
Our project in Mali is with a Peace Corps volunteer submitted the application originally. So.
Yeah, in Honduras as well, there's a Peace Corps volunteer within 20 miles or so, and we also, people who have returned from the Peace Corps that live in the Twin Cities are always offering to give us help because they did a lot of work down there, and so they know a lot about the country, so we've used those resources a lot as well.
Good, good. Other questions? I think, oh, yes.
Lots of questions.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to commend you on an outstanding organization and great work. I've done somewhat similar work with short-term ophthalmology projects, and in that arena, the organizations that have done that type of work have tried to move into a more sustainable format in that they've tended to partner with host country organizations and build schools and then gradually turn over the whole operation to locals. And I'm pleased to hear that you do have at least a 5-year relationship in the places that you do your projects. And I know you're a somewhat young organization, but what evidence do you have that this is sustainable when you don't come back after 5 years? Have you been able to look at some of the earlier projects that you're maybe not checking in on every year and see that they're going on and see if they have any ripple effect in the country without the need for outside guests?
We're working with a lot of our local partners to do just that, to go back and monitor and evaluate what has happened outside of the original chapter. We're actively going to start that this year, and we're going to go back and one simple question, does it still work? And if the answer is no, we're going to find out why it doesn't and what needs to be improved to get it back to operational status. If it does still work, we also want to know how come it was successful so we can embed those lessons learned into our program. One of the things I will say is part of the success of our program is while we're there in that 5 years, we're not only partnering with the community, but with also a trusted local partner, typically an NGO that's down there that comes from that country as well. So we're not doing this by ourselves, it's in collaboration with a whole host of other folks.
You know, I can answer that a little bit with the orphanage. The other thing that happened was when our chapter of EWB came down to Cologne, it's right next to Querétaro, which is a community of about 1.5 million people. They have the state university there, and so we engaged the university students at the University of Querétaro, which then adopted the orphanage. And so there's the local Rotary Club, the local university, which are doing that independent of what our activities are, yet we collaborate with them. So I think what we're finding is that they're using the same model that we are and really helping out using their students to do, and their professionals to do the same thing.
I'd say that sustainability is definitely at the core of what Engineers Without Borders USA is about. We need to make sure that these projects are sustainable and that the definition of success for them isn't just, is it working technologically speaking, but socially as well, and is the community adopting it? And because of the model, because these projects are community initiated, find that the community is adopting it and they have invested in it, and that's why they tend to be more sustainable, I would say. I just also wanted to point out for the community that we worked with in El Salvador, I'm actually Facebook friends with a couple of people that were part of that project, and so we've been keeping in touch with them that way and asking about the retaining wall every once in a while, and also about the well that we were involved in drilling over there.
Yeah, I was going to say in Honduras as well, they have all of our phone numbers, they know how to get a hold of us, and they do on a regular basis. I don't see that stopping in 5 years. So.
Yeah, that's good.
We had, I think in the video that you saw earlier, Mike Paddock is one of our professionals. He works at CH2M Hill in Milwaukee, and he has been building bridges in Guatemala. And because he's had such a long-standing program, both prior to EWB and after, the government, after the latest hurricane hit down there, asked him to come down to Guatemala and help triage their bridges. And he went to one of the communities that he had built an EWB bridge in, and it was still standing. And they dubbed it the, what did they call it? They had a special name for it. I forget the name out of that magazine article. But he asked the community, you know, what are you guys going to do? How are you going to fix some of the railings and stuff that were damaged? And they said, oh, well, you know, you told us we had to fix it, and this was our bridge, and so we've collected the money. We're going to go out and buy the materials when we can find them, and we'll fix it. And that's exactly what we want these communities to do. We want them to know it is their bridge. We're honored enough to go and assist them, but it's theirs. And they are perfectly empowered. They're entrepreneurial. They'll decide their own utility systems, whether each family gives a half a chicken a year or whatever, to keep these systems in operation.
Cool. I think we had another question right here in the front. Two questions.
My question is, if you are students, I expect that you are students, so who are overseeing, see in the United States or in any countries, all projects need somebody, licensed person, and who are doing something similar one for those projects?
Yeah. Just wanting to know about the professionals' involvement.
So every engineering student chapter has to have professional engineers who know how to design and construct this. Similar to our system here where engineering students are interns within the corporate environment, it's no different within EWB. You have to have professional engineers who know how to design and construct that which you're doing in the community internationally. In addition, you do have to comply with all the rules and regulations and licensure in the country in which you're working.
Does that include that the professionals go into the field with the students? There's always at least one professional in the field? Good. Good. Thanks.
Related to those last two questions, I wonder if one of you could comment on links with the academic programs at the universities. You mentioned the engineering organizations that would recruit the students and take advantage of their enthusiasm, but has that translated into project-based courses and ways to interact with practice?
You know, I sit on the Carroll College as well as Colorado State engineering advisory boards, and at both programs, one of the things on a lot of the pictures, you'll see these students, and they actually recruit students with EWB. So EWB is a very good recruiting tool for a lot of these universities to get students to come to their program. The other piece that we're starting to see is that they're using that 5-year commitment to have the students go through a program continuously. So they're part of that overall project, and it now makes all kinds of sense why you're going through calculus and chemistry and all the other things, because you're actually able to start applying some of that knowledge. And the mentoring of both the professional, the university professor, and the upperclassmen to the lower class keeps those students in the program. So one of the things we're finding is that we're able to retain students. As most people know, there's a huge number of students that go into engineering, only about 10% graduate. These kinds of programs allow them to keep those students interested and engaged to get through calculus. I mean, getting through calculus is not a lot of fun, but if you see things on the other side of it that you're actually going to help communities, it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. And I can also attest to the program at the University of Colorado. The founder, Dr. Amade, he's a professor at the University of Colorado, and one of the things that he did after founding EWB was form the Mortensen Center for Engineering and Developing Communities, and that's a track that's in the civil engineering department specifically tailored to this kind of engineering, and we're taking courses in sustainable community development and water and sanitation and hygiene for developing communities. And so that, I know it's been around for years now. Right now we have 43 graduate students in that program, so the enrollment has increased pretty drastically just in the last 2 years.
Early on, there was not so much in engineering curricula. These days you'll find it sprinkled around there, whether it's the Freshman 101 Intro to Engineering with an EWB chapter doing a presentation or a program, or it becomes a senior project, or they can get individual study credits for it.
I know at my university at U of A, we're steadily trying to get more support from the faculty and from the College of Engineering to help implement programs into the Engineering 102. I know I spoke with a professor who was teaching the Intro to Engineering course, and tried to talk to her a little bit about something I had read as a freshman from actually EWB, I think in Canada, where they were implementing it in their freshman 102 classes. And so that was something that I've been trying to focus on this year as a president, talking more to our dean and just finding ways that they can help us recruit students who are interested in this kind of work, and also encourage them to continue in engineering. And also, our Ghana project, they actually, one of the projects for it, they wanted to build a solar water level tester for the roughing filter to gauge the water level in the tank, actually the distribution tank, and that actually was taken on by a senior engineering design project. And so I had learned that like last year, and I had no clue that our chapter had really sunk into the university that much, and so that was very encouraging to see.
Good. Well, my turn to ask a couple more questions. Was there someone else who wanted a question? No, me.
No, just a couple questions for you, Jan, and then some closing thoughts, I think.
Okay, good. Good. Yeah, I wanted to ask Sarah and Lauren if it's been more challenging, first of all, just to be a woman engineer, but also to be a woman in, you know, a country in Africa or South America or wherever, Central America.
I will say yes, it has been a little more challenging. For me, it hasn't been as bad as it was for one of my colleagues. She returned from India and was frustrated. She was venting her frustration that the NGO, the non-governmental organization she was working with, the representative never looked her directly in the eye. She felt like she didn't quite exist in his eyes, and she had to keep staying involved that way. But for me, it hasn't been that as bad as her experience, I'd say. But I do know that both in El Salvador and Uganda, I've asked even if I was a project manager of one of those projects, I asked a member of our team who was an older male, him to lead all of our discussions with the community, because I knew that he would be more well respected. And in Uganda, just this last summer, I was getting a little bit frustrated working with some of the trainers there, and I could tell I was being made fun of a lot. And I would just hear the word Mzungu for white one. I heard that a lot, and things like, look at the Mzungu, she's still eating her sugar cane. You know, everyone else had finished eating their sugar cane. Or look at the Mzungu place the ladder, she's gonna fall, things like that. But then I noticed a couple days after I had been working there, one of the same guys that had been making fun of me, he started clapping his hands, and he was saying, "Yay, Engineer Sarah!" And I felt like that was somewhat of a turning point, that I had finally earned his respect. It took me a few days to get there, but I was happy that I reached that point.
That's cool. Lauren, how about you?
Yeah. Just for engineering in general, I mean, I currently am an intern at a bigger engineering firm, and I'm the only woman and the youngest of a group of 9 engineers, and that's somewhat intimidating coming into the office, but I have been able to deal with it, and it's been good, and they joke about me keeping them in line. But so that's an interesting experience there. But then also abroad in Mali, we were working on some pumps, the India Mark II pump, which is basically all over Africa, and we were doing some assessment on some of the pumps, and most of the time I was just taking notes and taking pictures, and I didn't really get the chance to get my hands in there, and I really wanted to at times, but I really felt that it was more a place for the older men on our group, our trip, and even some of the younger guys, just to get their hands in there with the local men who were helping out, because there weren't any women who were helping out as well, so felt like it was more my place to take pictures and notes, but I enjoyed that as well, so I don't know, just seemed that it was appropriate.
Good. Well, let's get to the sort of the heart of this whole thing is, you know, is what was, I forget whether someone said this or it was in the movie, that we have to, David, I think you said this, that we have to make everyone understand that engineering is a way, oh no, it was Lauren, you said the things that people pick, and they don't say that engineering is to help people, but I mean, it's just, you know, we all know how engineering, without drinking water, without electricity, without infrastructure, without, I just if you could all give me your thoughts about engineering. I mean, obviously you're in this and you're committed to it, but if you could just speak about it for a minute. Closing thoughts on how EWB is carrying out engineering helping people.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see in the market today how engineering kind of gets clouded over. I mean, and I know we're getting better at this in terms of collaboration, cross-collaboration across corporations, but I know that I work at a utility company, and I think the average age there is somewhere in, so people have been there for a while, and engineering does have that, have that stigma that we sit in our cubes and we crank out calculations and we suck at talking to people and we only care about math and science. So I think things like this, coupled with the fact that we are working across departments, I mean, obviously, when my coworkers hear about me working in this sort of thing, they're like, "You're not a typical engineer, are you?" I'm like, "Oh, no, we're kind of, we all like doing this stuff, and it's very important." And I mean, it's contagious. I've seen in our chapter just the participation since I started even 2 years ago. It's just skyrocketing. So.
Yeah, thanks. I want to pitch just a last question to Kathy and David. What is EWB's biggest need? How can people in the audience like this and ENR's readers, how can we help? What does EWB need?
Well, I want to go back to your other question
Okay,
first.
fine, good.
One of the things that, and you saw it here tonight, one of the things that engineers don't do very well is tell stories. And yet we saw wonderful stories tonight from our young engineers.
Anybody wants to write for ENR, you're good storytellers.
But the other piece of that I see that EWB brings out is that engineers have a gift. And that gift is to be able to vision a different world. And that's something that very small part of the population has that gift. And I think that that's very important that we continue to encourage our very young people in elementary and junior high. That's really when you have to make that decision. You want to become an engineer, you're making it when you're 11 and 12 years old. And it seems to me that what we need from EWB standpoint is support. So we want our companies to support the ability to do that. If we do that, then we're going to have much better engineers than we have today. And I've seen it time and time again. I can't tell you the joy that I get when I'm down at the orphanage and you can see something working well. Those young people coming up to you and thanking you and having a good time with them, that is very telling. And one of the things that happened to us when we were there, this young 10-year-old girl came up to me and said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to make this a better place for you." And she said, "You're from the United States. Why do you care? You have such a wonderful place to live. Why do you care what's happening here?" And it's this gift that we have to share with others. I think that's very important. And so support of our organization will help us do that.
Good. Any last thought about
I'm not going to try and top that one.
Okay. I agree. I think that was a rousing conclusion. And let's give these panelists a round of applause.
Allow me to thank all of you for joining us this evening for this very special program. And join me again in thanking Jan Tuckman and these 5 amazing representatives of EWB for telling their incredible world-changing stories. Thank you very much.